In 1983, Hollywood set out to reimagine one of the spookiest and most beloved TV shows of all time, The Twilight Zone. But what was meant to be a nostalgic trip into the unknown turned into one of the darkest moments in movie history. A tragic on-set accident during filming not only shocked audiences, but also forced both the film industry and the FAA to take a hard look at their safety standards. In this episode, we explore the making of the Twilight Zone movie, the decisions that led to disaster, and how the aftermath reshaped rules for stunts, special effects, and even the aviation safety on set. Sometimes the scariest stories aren't scripted. They happen behind the camera. You're listening to Halloween Month with Real Stories, Real Problems with Rachel and Roxanne.
Rachel, how are you doing today?
I'm good. How are you?
I grew up watching the Twilight Zone, the original one from the 60s. And I was always angry because it came on the same channel as Major League Baseball came on. And if the baseball ran late, I wasn't allowed to stay up late and watch the Twilight Zone. I mean, I was like 11, but it's always had a soft place in my heart. I loved the 80s remake as well because I'm a child of the 80s. And then when the movie came out, not only was I disappointed in the movie as a movie, but then I found out that it killed people. So that made it even a little worse.
I bet.
Yes.
Yeah, I will say that most recently, Jordan Peele did a remake of The Twilight Zone that I thought was amazing. One of the episodes titled Try, I think may be the best screenwriting I've seen on television in my entire life.
I have to write this down. Jordan Peele, Peele.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, the guy who wrote and directed Get Out. He did a remake of The Twilight Zone a few years ago. I want to say 2018, 2019. And there was one episode I was not tons of impressed with, but all the rest of it I thought was great. And the episode titled Try, like if you fail, try again.
Yeah.
Honestly, breathtakingly good. The script was so good. And I can't speak highly enough of that episode. I highly recommend it.
I know what I'm going to be watching right after this podcast. Well,
Yeah.
Is it on Netflix, Tubi, HBO Max?
That's a good question. I would take a look and see what I can find.
Okay.
But before I look that up, let's talk about. So this movie was made in 1982, and let's talk about some of what was going on in 1982.
Because we couldn't find anything about who directed it or when it was actually like these things happened, when the documentary was made. We know when the movie was made, but not the documentary. So
right,
we're just gonna have to go to the Wayback Machine, I guess.
Yeah, the actual documentary that we're talking about is called Hollywood's Deadliest Accident: The Twilight Zone Trial of John Landis. And it's posted on the Cinema Forum on YouTube channel, but we don't have a date it was made or who made it or any information about it beyond the fact that it is on YouTube. So we're getting in the Wayback Machine. We're going to go back to 1982. That is when Argentina invaded the Falkland Islands, starting the Falklands War with Great Britain. That is when Steven Spielberg released E.T. the Extraterrestrial, which became the highest grossing film of the decade. That was when the compact disc was introduced, and Roxanne demonstrated her business acumen by saying, "That'll never catch on."
That'll never catch on.
That was when Leonid Brezhnev died, and a Chinese man set the world record by lifting 32 kilos with his nipples.
Yes.
I don't know that there needed to be a world record for that, but whatever.
No, he just put fish hooks through his nipples, attached them to 32-kilo weights, and why? Who? China. That's all I can say is China. When you're in a communist country, there's not much you can do. So hobbies are important.
I I guess. I mean, at this point, I was colicky and throwing up on my mom, so I have no idea what any of this was going on at the time.
Was real right? Yes, exactly.
But yeah, so that's what was going on, some of what was going on in 1982.
Mhm.
And essentially, this whole documentary was about the filming process of the Twilight Zone movie and the reckless endangerment and the, lack of safety precautions that were, in order to save money, they did not put precautions in place. They exploited child labor laws. They ended up having people die in a really easily preventable way. And in the end, I mean, spoilers, but
Yeah.
in the end, no one person was held accountable, and everybody that was responsible for this kind of got off scot-free. So
Absolutely.
it's a frustrating thing to think about from the point of view of like OSHA regulations and FAA regulations and all of the things. Because for those people who've never seen the movie or heard anything about the case, um, the Twilight Zone movie was designed so that there were multiple directors that were each going to direct a small part. So it would be like several episodes of the Twilight Zone kind of merged together into a movie.
Right.
John Landis, in his episode, he had a guy that was essentially going back through time and representing people through multiple decades and generations. And the last section was going to be him living through the Vietnam War.
Vic Morrow's character was basically an Archie Bunker. He was a bigot, and so he throughout his whole episode, he got to experience what it was like to be black in the South with lynching, people living in communist countries demanding his papers wherever he went, and his final test was indeed as a Vietnamese soldier, trying to survive, jungle warfare as his who he considered to be his fellow Americans still were trying to kill him. So he went through a big soul journey, probably the biggest soul journey of the movie, and this is how it turned out.
Well, in the process of filming this Vietnam War segment of the Twilight Zone movie, there is a helicopter that's landing, and he's trying to help these two little Vietnamese children escape. And as they address in the documentary, there is some question about who said what about where the helicopter should be and where the pyrotechnics should be going off and like all of this stuff. And in the process, the helicopter fell, essentially. It got
Mhm.
hit by pyrotechnics and fell, and it killed Vic Morrow and both of the little kids who were in this scene. 3 people died. And as the trial went on, you find out that these kids were like illegally working. They were not American citizens. They were not child actors. They were not like it.
Mhm.
It was almost like he went and bought children from Vietnam. I mean, that's not what he did, but
He kind of rented them. Yeah.
yeah, it was one of those things like he did not go through the proper channels to hire professional actors to have people who would be their agents and their parents and people on who knew to be on set to protect those kids.
Right.
He basically picked 2 kids whose families didn't know any better and dropped them off like they were going to school.
Exactly. And interestingly, and even to this day, the law is if you have fewer than 5 spoken lines in a movie or a TV show, you don't have to get paid. So that's why there's so many extra, like a waitress with, "Can I take your order?" one line, and then, "Thanks, I'll be right back with that." 2 lines. She doesn't get it in the credits. She doesn't have to get paid. Um, I don't think that the Vietnamese families even really comprehended what was going on.
Yeah, I
They probably thought it was a big adventure, and because Vic Morrow had, one child under one arm and the other under another, their heads and necks were all at the optimum level, and that is how they were killed. The rotors on they were all decapitated.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um, and this kind of all came about because Warner Brothers really wanted to capitalize on horror shorts made into feature-length films because this was the time of Creepshow and Tales from the Crypt, and this was a big deal in the 80s. Like I wasn't
Yeah.
even watching this stuff in the 80s, but I remember in the 90s when reruns were a huge deal. Tales from the Crypt and Creepshow and Twilight Zone and even stuff like Perry Mason was trying to be a little bit spooky and they ran that into the ground of, anything that felt weird and creepy and like short form horror. They,
Oh, the Outer Limits?
yeah, Outer
Do I
Limits
think
for
yep.
sure.
Mhm. Mhm.
They really were pushing that as TV in the 80s. And God bless them,
Oh,
'cause
yeah.
that's some of the best stuff on TV. So they were really pushing for this. They wanted to, make money off of this concept that was really hot in the media.
Sure.
And they also they wanted to have an opportunity to work with some big name directors because this was not like nobodies. This was
Right.
Jonathan Landis and Steven Spielberg were a part of this, and it was a huge deal. Jonathan Landis, for those people who don't know, he directed Animal House, he directed An American Werewolf in London and The Blues Brothers. Like he had a solid career. He was
Yeah.
somebody you wanted to be associated with in the industry.
Yeah, he had pretty good street cred already, you know?
Yep. And so when they brought in Vic Morrow, who was the guy who was cast in this short, he was he was a relatively big name too, and everybody was very excited to see where this was going. And in the end, like he eh, he was so excited about this, and he ended up the thing that he wanted to do that he loved more than anything killed him, which is so
Mhm.
sad. But yeah, they get into the rescue scene, which is him rescuing these little children, and it was
Right.
shot at like 3:30 in the morning in July. It was a death trap. There were no safety permits filed, no injunctions were issued. Nobody was told there was a movie being filmed nearby. They thought they were in a legitimate demilitarized zone.
Oh,
And
yeah, and they must have been scared to death because 'cause they've heard stories of the actual Vietnam War from their parents and from their grandparents, and all of a sudden, all these white dudes show up in military uniforms with searchlights. I mean, I can't even imagine.
no, but the first night the helicopter crashed. Like they sustained injuries and 3 people on the ground were all killed and the spinning helicopter blades literally fell on them and decapitated them all.
Mhm, and they were like, "Oh, that's bad. We should maybe fix that."
Yeah, and the 2 children were working without any child labor laws, which would have made Warner Brothers pay insurance premiums.
Yep.
Like,
Mhm.
this is again another episode where people wanting to skirt insurance regulations cause
Yep.
significant death and destruction and damage. As much as we as a culture really hate insurance companies because they are really pushing to make as much money and offer as little service as possible.
Yeah.
Insurance has a very real purpose in the world. And
Yes.
like if you can't afford the insurance, you can't afford to do this movie. Like,
And it's not like it was Warner Brothers. It wasn't like, Bill and Ted's Excellent Movie Company. It was friggin' Warner Brothers. There was Spielberg. There was Landis. I mean, these people had the money. It would be a pittance. The kids were in one scene. They didn't have lines, but and that's one of the reasons I wanted to do this because you're an insurance expert, and I knew that you'd be foaming at the mouth over some of these things.
I have said time and time again, and I will continue to say it. If you are working with someone, whether that's a company or an individual who's doing work on your house or whatever, ask to see the insurance paperwork. Ask to
Mhm.
see it because you want to know, one, that it's there, two, that
Right.
it's legitimate, and three, who to reach out to file a claim if something happens. Like,
And if it's an arbiter, no.
yeah, and like I do get a little bit of anytime somebody comes to do work on my house, if you're coming to cut down a tree in the yard or do work on my roof or whatever, gonna paint everything, that's fine. I want to see your insurance. And
Yeah.
people kind of blink a few times when I ask, and they're like, "Of course you can see my insurance." But it's obvious I am the only person they've ever met who has asked for this.
Mhm.
Um, and everyone should ask for this.
Oh, definitely. And something else that made this whole situation especially tragic is Vic Morrow was the father of an actress called Jennifer Jason Leigh, who is still acting, and she's probably about your age, probably in early 40s by now. Um, and Fast Times at Ridgemont High was her very first lead role. Filming started in 1982, a month after her dad was viciously slaughtered on a movie set doing something illegal. I mean, he wasn't doing it illegal, but this terrible, it's not like he just died of a heart attack. This was like a horrible thing. 30 days later, she had to show up on set and be the lead actress in a comedy film. I don't need it in all my years in professional theater. I don't think I could have done that.
That's a terrible thing for her to have to go through. And if you go back far enough in the history of movie making, it was really dangerous. People died a lot, especially if they were
Mhm.
filming like a flood scene or an explosion or something. And it was just understood that you were putting yourself in harm's way to be in a movie. And then people stepped in and unions were created and regulations were passed to protect people. But the industry itself has pushed back on, we don't want to take this, we don't want to pay for the insurance, we don't want to do this, this is going to cost us too much, we can't make this movie if we have to pay for that. But when you
Mhm.
don't take those precautions and you don't get the insurance and you don't make sure
Yeah.
everything is safe, people die.
And what's going to cost more, your insurance premium or the wrongful death suit that the family is going to bring against the studio?
I mean,
Y-
even if you win that lawsuit, as John Landis found out, because he ended up winning his lawsuit in the end, or at least not losing his lawsuit.
Not lose. I was going to say there's a difference in law between winning and not losing. So
Yeah, so
yeah.
he did not lose his lawsuit, but he had to pay for a legal team to come in and argue for him. There is no way the year and however many months he spent in court dealing with this cost him less than it would have cost to insure that set.
Not
And
to mention the bad press that he had to contend with for like 20 years. This wasn't like, oh, it's over, we're done. It was like the OJ trial almost on a smaller scale.
oh,
People just
yeah, and
didn't
it was
shut up about it.
everyone on the set basically sued everyone else. Like it became this monster. Well, I'm going to blame the pilot, so we're going to sue him. Well, I didn't have anything to do with it. You're the one who told me to come fly lower, so I'm going to sue you.
Mhm.
And it was back and forth. Basically, everybody kind of got churned into the legal machine. And it was nothing but finger pointing and whistleblowing and just all over the place.
I am actually looking up when the next movie John Landis directed to after this one. I'm going to see how long he was. And when I type in "when" in my search engine, the first auto thing that comes up was, "When was the last lobotomy in the U.S.?" What the hell is wrong with me? Why? If I die before you, you have to destroy my hard drive because, damn.
I will.
Okay. All right. Apparently, the next movie he was hired to direct after Twilight Zone was Trading Places, the comedy with Eddie Murphy and Dan Aykroyd. And Dan Aykroyd, I do know, was friends with Landis because he was in that little in the very beginning when they're in the van, the hitchhiker and Steve Gutenberg, yeah, Albert Brooks, not Steve Gutenberg. Yeah, so that was that. So his career certainly didn't,
The judge basically, they went in for a bench trial where it's just determined by a judge. And the judge looked at all of this and listened to every single person say they had no clue where the order to fly lower came from. And he finally was like, you know what? No, we're done with this. You're going to a jury trial because this is
You're
not.
going to a jury trial. I don't want anything to do. Right. Mm-hmm.
And it just, everything that came out got worse and worse. There was more and more confusion. All of the parents at the trial testified that they were not told that there was any danger, that there was going to be pyrotechnics or helicopters.
Right.
And
Right.
Warner Brothers and Jonathan and John Landis all said, of course we told you. We would never not tell you that this was a thing. And so back and forth, it's he said, she said, where does this come from kind of thing. It just was this constant, well, I don't know whose fault it is, but not mine. Basically, the whole for
Yeah, right. Those dead bodies, not mine.
And then, people were very worried about the child labor laws that were involved with this. And it reminded me, the whole time I was watching this documentary, I was just reminded how much I hate having any kind of discussion with a lawyer. Like, I can talk to somebody who's a lawyer and, small talk, whatever. But
Which you do often in your business.
Yeah. But the second it becomes a discussion about, well, I think this, well, you think that, lawyers just across the board seem to believe that if you are better at arguing your point, that makes you right. That there is no concept that you've maybe successfully argued a point, but you are arguing in favor of genocide or murdering children or, awful, awful things that you should not be supporting, that are wrong, but you've decided that as long as you spin your words well enough that somebody has to concede a point to you or cannot respond to your argument in any kind of way that fits with the conversation, that they lose. It is infuriating.
Well, there is that joke that all a jury trial is 12 people deciding who has the best looking lawyer.
So I don't know if you know this, but I was on a jury in 2009, 2008, when I was living in New York City.
Well, that was right before we met. So no, I did not know that.
I was living in New York, and I was one of 12 people chosen for a trial. There was a group of three young men, who were accused of beating a woman very badly and stealing her purse, and then running and hiding. And one of them had a gun. In this process, there was a gun found with these three guys when they were hiding from the police. As the police,
did they use the gun to mug the woman, or was the gun just there?
Okay. No, it was just there. But just having it there in the commission of a crime, whether or not you aimed it at anybody, you still get, extra
armed robbery.
So It was me and 11 other people, and we were sitting on this jury, and we heard all of the arguments from all of the lawyers. And each of the three guys, one of them had his own attorney, and two of them were sharing an attorney. The one had his own attorney, and the two were sharing like the district assigned defense lawyer.
The public defender.
Yeah, like the defender, and the prosecuting attorney was, she did an excellent job of making her case. And at one point in the deliberation room, we were all eating lunch because they have a thing where you place an order and they'll bring you lunch when you're, deliberating in the jury. We all kind of decided that if we were going to hire one of those attorneys, it would be the one that was just representing the one guy, because he did such an excellent job of humanizing this man. The other two, their attorney got up and it was like, well, there's no video evidence that they did it, kind of thing. Like, his argument was very, you can't prove they did, and so that's enough. Like, you can't go back in time and watch them commit this crime. So there's no proof for that. The other guy actually had his client take the stand and was asking him basic questions like, so you were here at this location at this time, and then you were found at this location at the other time by the police. How far was that? And the kid couldn't do the math to figure out how many blocks away he was. Like, so he really tried to make it so you could see that this was a kid who wasn't well educated, and he was in a difficult situation, and like, you really kind of felt for this kid, and it was obvious in the process that he got dragged into this by the other two. Like, he was the one on watch while the other two beat up the old lady, and he was the one, like, he was in this purely by circumstance because his friends dragged him into it, and that was clear. But just in the conversation that we were having, but watching the attorneys go at each other in this, well, according to this, that, and the other, I'm going to argue in this way, and haha, look, I have one up to you. But because they were both on the same wavelength, you could watch that conversation and it was fine.
Right.
But if one of those attorneys were arguing with like somebody in the jury or somebody out on the street, or the guy selling hot dogs at the cart or whatever, it's infuriating because they're like, oh, ho, you didn't know about this verbal technique that I've used to best you. And you're like, bitch, that doesn't make you right. that makes you eloquent. Good for you. But it was just infuriating. And every time I watched the prosecuting attorney, because that was the lady in red, she was the one who was prosecuting them, I just hated her because she had this, well, of course I'm right, and of course, you're dumb if you don't know that I'm right, and like this very unpleasant approach. And I didn't need her to be nice. Like, I wasn't looking for nice. I needed her to not clearly think she was better than everybody else.
Right.
But for what she was doing, like in the courtroom, she was 100% on. Like, that's who you want in the courtroom.
Right. You want a pit bull. You want a Mongol horde member.
I definitely would not have wanted to have dinner with her. She would have just driven me nuts.
Probably not.
So the whole time I'm watching this, I'm like, oh, I hate this. Why are you? Oh, I can't believe they're making me listen. But it was so important. Because they were trying to say, show who said what to who, and show where orders came from, and show, why did he feel like he couldn't see to lower the helicopter, and they even got the pyrotechnics guy up there and showed his safety visor that he had to wear, and it's got this little like 4-inch by 2-inch rectangle of safety glass in the middle of a giant iron mask.
Yeah.
And so of course he couldn't see where the helicopter was, and of course he couldn't see. It felt
and then there was even the stunt helicopter pilot was like, I wouldn't have done this except that I was ordered. Yeah, I wonder how many people involved in that incident have survivor's guilt.
Oh, I
That
would bet most of them.
I'm sure yeah, I'm sure they do. I couldn't go to bed at night knowing that, because I was too cowardly to stand up to John Landis, that three people are dead, including the father of a 21-year-old girl that in 3 weeks was starting her first starring role in a movie. I drive myself crazy. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, and two kids that don't even necessarily speak English are now dead because you tricked them essentially into thinking this was gonna be a
Yes.
fake fun thing. Like,
Yeah.
it is so weird to me when there's this, well, it's not my fault, it's your fault. It's not my fault, it's your fault. Because I immediately absorb all that guilt and I'm like, what could I have done differently? Why is this my fault?
Oh, I know. Me too.
I,
Yeah.
but yeah, they very clearly, like, nobody had any solid clue who was responsible for what. And even if they did, nobody was going to take any blame for anything. Like, it was just infuriating to watch this whole
Yeah.
process. So, I mean, essentially, all of the rest of this aside, the Twilight Zone movie cost about $10 million to make. It was, and it ended up not being the enormous like success that they had thought it was going to be, in
Right.
large part because of this horrible accident, and nobody felt comfortable going to see this movie, knowing what had happened. Um, but it was still enough of a success that it encouraged CBS to go ahead and greenlight the 1980s version of The Twilight Zone for TV. Like, this was a still moderately successful movie.
Right. Right. It served
Um,
its purpose in a smaller way than they hoped, but it did renew an interest in to a new generation of a truly great, groundbreaking science fiction fantasy show. Absolutely.
yes. And in the end, all of this stuff happened, and it, according to Mark Locker, who was the Screen Actors Guild spokesman at the time, his quote was that the entire ordeal had shaken the industry in its bottom. Like, Warner Brothers set up dedicated safety committees to establish, standards for all parts of filmmaking, including gunfire and pyrotechnics and, aircraft and everything. Like, if something was even mildly potentially dangerous, Warner Brothers had set up a safety committee to kind of protect people from that.
Right. And had this only existed when Action Park was a thing. I mean,
Oh my goodness.
can
Uh,
you imagine that? Like actual safety regulations in Action Park. And for our listeners who do not know of which I speak, go back and watch the Traction Park episode that Rachel and I did about a month ago.
yeah. They so this horrible accident was such a big deal that it really forced people to put safety regulations in place.
Mm.
Um, and then, the Directors Guild of America also put in place safety committees to begin publishing safety bulletins for its members and established a phone hotline so directors could get quick answers to safety questions so that they wouldn't be because this was before the internet, so that they wouldn't be on the set being like, is this dangerous? Probably not. Like, we can just do that. It gave them a place to go to get answers for that. And the guild also started to discipline the members for violating safety procedures on set, which was not a thing it had done prior to the Twilight
Certainly not. No.
accident. Um, and the Screen Actors Guild introduced a, 24-hour hotline. They had a safety team, and they were encouraging people to use their right of refusal, which is guaranteed in contracts, if you believe a scene is unsafe. Um, because of this, in from 1982 to 1986, filming accidents fell by 70%.
Wow.
During that 4-year period, there were still 6 deaths that happened on set, but there was a 70% decrease in the number of accidents that happened on set when people were allowed to say, this is not safe. My union protects me and gives me the right to say I'm not doing this until safety precautions are put in place.
Fabulous. Absolutely fabulous.
And then in 1987, the state fire marshal in California, they created a whole motion picture and entertainment safety program that was a direct response to this accident and
Mhm.
to, concerns about, are the laws being enforced, and, what are the regulations and requirements. So they put,
Mm.
this program into place that oversees all of the TV and movie industry use of pyrotechnics and special effects
Mhm.
that could cause fire in California.
Right, right.
This was a tragic accident, but it put in place safety precautions that protected people later. This is an excellent example of learning from your mistakes. And in all honesty, while I feel so bad for Vic Morrow and his
Oh.
family, he
Mhm.
did more for the industry with his death than he ever could have done in his life. If it had just been the 2 little kids who died, this would have been swept
Mhm.
under the rug. Nobody would have ever heard of it. It never would have seen the inside of a courtroom. There would have been,
Exactly.
yeah, there would
They
have
would have paid the
nothing.
parents pittance, you know, well, for them it would be a pittance, but for the parents it would have been a fortune, you
Yeah.
know.
So Vic,
Absolutely. And like I said, Jennifer Jason Leigh, she never shut up about it either. So, Vic Morrow did still have a voice in Hollywood through her.
yeah, what they did in response to harming a famous person who held status in the industry and kind of in the country just in general, because everybody knew who Vic Morrow was at that point. That
Yeah,
he was a household name.
sure.
The regulations that have been put in place, they cost a little bit to, it costs extra money to make sure stuff is safe, and nothing is 100%. We saw that with the Alec Baldwin, accidental shooting of somebody on set, and, it
Yeah,
happened even with the best of, precautions. There's
yeah,
nothing that is
yeah.
100% safe, but it put in place standards that otherwise would not exist and have
Right.
saved probably at this point hundreds of millions of dollars in legal fees and insurance payouts and all of the things that would come along with all of these deaths that would have happened, or all of these injuries that would have happened without this horrible incident taking place.
Sure, sure, sure.
Well, and when I think about this type of situation where a horrible thing has happened and we learn from it and we put things in place to prevent it from happening again, I have seen over the course of my life where we have stopped doing that, where something terrible happens and you are just expected to suck it up. And that's just how it is now. And there is no more learning from mistakes on a national level. And
Mhm.
that goes from everything from, school shootings and gun violence and to food safety to politics to it touches.
Xenophobia, gay bashing, well, trans LGBTQ bashing, sexual assault, male victim sexual assault, which is still by far the most underreported crime in the United States because of the shame factor. You know,
Yeah.
we all know it's out there, but unless somebody starts talking that has money, you know,
Yeah, it takes something of this size and people in place who feel responsible enough that they don't want this to happen again to
right.
really make positive change. And I mean, our podcast is financial in nature. Most of what we talk about is
Right.
we talk about, how it impacts, finances and things on a larger level. And this is one of those things. Like, I guarantee you the cost to insure a movie at Warner Brothers went up significantly after this
Oh
accident.
my God. Yes, I think that's like me with my 89 points on my driver's license. You know, yeah, I think they're in the high risk category. Absolutely. But I mean, also, you have to remember our financial podcast isn't aimed at people who are wealthy.
Yeah, no, not at all. And
Don't need us.
even within like this larger conversation of helping putting regulations in place both at the governmental level and at the organizational level with the unions and with the studios, like all of that, it takes money to make that change. Like, these are things that don't happen for free. And so even this story, which on its face is not necessarily financial in nature, it it has tendrils out into everything, in the way that it costs and the way that we spend money and the way that we value money over human lives. Like,
Hmm.
this accident, I guarantee you, for at least a while, made it so you could no longer say, I don't want to spend the money to do that. I don't want to spend the money to insure this. I don't want to spend the money to, take this extra safety step. No, you have to,
Yeah.
because something horrible could happen. And if you don't spend that money and take that time,
Hmm.
this is what you're going to be left with potentially.
Oh, and not to mention, I mean, if say John Landis he was sued in civil court, and he died, lawsuits in civil courts can be held in perpetuity. So his children would now be responsible for, and his children's children. And again, I would punch my dad in his undead face if I found out that that he did something stupid in 1952. And now I had to pay for it.
Yeah. And even Steven Spielberg said that the crash made him grow a little bit, and it left everyone who worked on that movie sick to the center of their souls. And he said,
Yeah.
no movie is worth dying for. I think people are standing up much more now than ever before to producers and directors who ask too much. If something isn't
Right.
safe, it's the right and responsibility of every actor or crew member to yell cut. So
Right.
this impacted some of the biggest movies that we ever have seen. Jurassic Park, that came after this. Steven Spielberg definitely would have had this in mind when he was having people attacked by giant, animatronic Tyrannosaurus. And,
Right. Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And also animal cruelty began to be looked at a lot more seriously. I mean, now you always see no animals were injured or killed during the film. Because prior to that, I bring up Ben-Hur again. There was in the silent version, not the Charlton Heston version, two horses were stampeded to death in one of the chariot races, along with an actor. There were real animals being slaughtered, and I mean, it was just terrible. Until PETA, got involved in the ASPA, got involved and said, excuse me, no, we can't do this either. Nobody, no living thing, with the exception of spiders, should be harmed in the making of a film. And even going to see a film, people felt weird about after the Aurora shooting at the Dark Knight Rises. They were like, okay, do I want to go see the Dark Knight Rises? Because part of my money is going to go to the people that produce it went there. What if, because obviously if they weren't showing that movie, Adam Lanza would not have come. Wait, was that Adam Lanza?
no, Adam Lynch was
Holmes.
Newtown.
You new to Holmes. Yeah, if he would not have come in dressed like that and mowed down a bunch of people in the theater. So it's like this constant moral, battle in your head. It's like, should I shop at Hobby Lobby? Do I get the waffle fries at Chick-fil-A? Do I do this at do I buy something from the Salvation Army? You're gonna drive yourself nuts. Ugh, I can't even.
Yeah, and so this is like we as individuals feel it on that level, and then the filmmakers and the industry are going to feel this on a much larger level. Like, okay, do I want to do this stunt? Is this going to hurt somebody? And do I want to, have this helicopter scene if it means it's maybe not safe? Like, okay, where is this money going? What is it supporting? How are we doing this? If I spend my money on this thing and do this, are people going to be upset about the choices I made? Like,
Right.
it impacts so much more than just that one individual film. And it comes
Mhm.
down to, even like granular decisions people are making, thousands of miles away from this have been impacted by this type of accident, by this type of event. Um, so yeah, it's
Unless you're Harrison Ford, who will try, he'll do anything. He'll try to kill you, he'll try to kill himself. He's probably got already the ER forms made out sitting on his desk at home. All you do is fill in the date. You know?
uh
Things like that. Yeah.
But yeah, so this has been the first of our month of October Halloween episodes of the podcast. Very exciting. Spooky documentaries every week this month. So
That's right.
please, please come back and join us again. We're going to talk about all sorts of spooky things from all different, places and things, and it's going to be fantastic. You're going to enjoy it
I'm
very.
very excited about it. And the majority of the girls I work with at the store are horror nuts. And they all know we have a podcast. So I'm going to put a little sign up in our break room. It starts now.
Yeah, because this is super exciting. But thanks for listening to Real Stories, Real Problems with your hosts, Rachel and Roxanne. We hope you enjoyed our deep dive into the value of regulations and Hollywood's deadliest accident, the Twilight Zone trial of John Landis. Join us again next week for a glimpse of another financial problem and a documentary all about it. If you enjoyed our show today, please remember to like, subscribe, and leave us a review on your podcast app. Thanks for listening. See you again next week.
Bye for now.